Hello, and be welcome to the world of darkness. Long ago was it that the sin of Cain spawned the cursed horror that stalks the street at night in search of living blood. The kindred have long been a secret influence through all ages of human history, plotting against one another in a never-ending jihad. Their immortal progeny are among us to this day, hidden from the eyes of humanity by an elaborate masquerade. The door closing behind you, you find that you are already alone in the room with Mr. Harker, who has arrived not long ago by cab, sent by you. He didn't waste much of any time immediately departing from the carriage and making his way to the room that was waiting for him. You find him sat at a table by the window. A small cup in front of him with tea. He looks out of the window, waiting. The room is fairly small by comparison to the Swan, but it is comfortable and quite nice. The furnishings are new, the walls freshly pressed with new wallpaper, the rugs freshly cleaned, all of the utensils and other dishware you would use are also quite new. And the chandelier hanging from above provides a comfortable, warm ambiance in the room. As the door is clicked to a close behind you on well-oiled hinges, you have a brief moment. As you can see, he lifts his head from his thoughts from looking out the window.
I want to briefly check the watch on my chatelaine just to see how much time I have before I am due to return.
Well, the pub is luckily very close to where you live. In fact, it's practically not even a 5-minute walk. So, you'll have a better part of an hour.
Okay. I turn to look at Mr. Harker. Eyes somewhat concealed by the hat. As I say, good evening, Mr. Harker. And do please forgive my last-minute change in choice of locale.
Now that his eyes are trained on you, he stands as you have entered, inclines his upper body slightly towards you. It's no trouble, really. I assumed there would be a reason for it. So don't feel the need to apologize. It's perfectly fine. I do appreciate the choice of venue. I don't think I've been up to Highgate in a while.
Out of character, firstly, could I just attempt to read and gauge his general mood?
Perception and empathy. You get the impression he is dreadfully bored. With a very polite smile, he moves to the side of the table, pulling out your chair and gesturing for you to take a seat.
I move to the seat, giving a very brief curtsy to Mr. Harker before taking.
He slides your seat in and moves back to his own, throwing out the tails of his somewhat shabby coat as he sits back down in it and scoots forward a little. Just like last time, he does look a bit on the shabby side. The suit he's wearing, though clearly expensive, is ill-fitting and unkempt. His eyes a bit puffy. It's evident that he has given minimal effort to his appearance. He's also very pale, not like you, but pale in the nature of mortals who don't get enough natural light. As you employ the blush of life, providing a bit of ruddiness to your undead flesh and a bit of warmth to your hands, you note that he pushes a teacup before you, already filled with tea, still hot, a bit of steam rising from it. Smells quite nice. You take a moment. You've smelled it before at Bainbridge's Haven, though you can't identify it. You're not as much of an aficionado as the regent would be. He sits across from you and smiles, polite. I hope you don't mind my forwardness. He gestures to the tea. Your hands were very cold. You said you were interested in what was going on in Whitechapel, not the Ripper business, I'd imagine. Not with the lack of care with which you approached the crime scene. May I inquire as to your interest?
I was curious if there was any merit to the speculation of unnatural involvement with others, or perhaps even ritual sacrifice. But what of your purpose in Whitechapel the prior evening? You were perhaps just as out of place as I was. I always thought your attire too fine.
Charisma and expression. Takes a moment, as though he's considering your words with the utmost care, before he finally responds. Much the same. On behalf of the party of which I am involved, I was inquiring into the matter. I thought there might be a common link into some of that of which we have been investigating.
Yes, I do remember last night you mentioned that recent events had taken your interest.
Not for any of the Ripper killings particularly. In fact, might I ask who it is that you represent?
The Hermetic Order of Dawn, previously Rising Day. I believe you may be acquainted.
I am, as I was a member. Though I must remark that it is, well, remarkable to see a woman of learning permitted within the fraternity. A sign of social change. He takes a sip of his tea and gestures to yours. Do you find it to your liking? I made the choice while I waited.
Rebecca would say that she's afraid she has an upcoming engagement for which she would not think to drink or eat anything prior to it. But she thinks
Manipulation subterfuge. He stares for a moment before nodding in acquiescence. My sincere apology. I hadn't meant to be rude. You seemed cold when you were out.
Out of character. Can I try and read him again?
You get the impression he's dissatisfied.
For God's sake.
The Golden Dawn might dismiss this. Though, as you clearly know so much of me, you must know then my affiliation. We are not so quick to squander supernatural theory. We believed, particularly myself, that the Ripper killings may be in connection, a common link, to a series of attacks being perpetrated on a number of students and lecturers, some publishers of ideological pamphlets. Our interest was piqued, though I have discerned that there is no connection between the Ripper and these attacks. It was put forward by some of our members the idea that this mysterious attacker is taking some sustenance from his victim. Though we were at a loss as to exactly what, my current theory is that their superior mind must be a factor.
And I assume you originally thought the Ripper somehow connected because of his removal of organs from his victims.
No, not at all. Though they were distinctive and apparently at random, there is more common links between the Ripper killings than this mysterious attacker. The brutal nature being one, the other being the prostitution. Though some of the prostitutes were educated.
Educated.
Of moderate learning. That was what made us believe there may be a common link, or perhaps another such attacker that feeds on a different breed of individual with very distinct characteristics linking them, some of which may not even be physical. I've concluded that they are not the same, And this Ripper, not to be drawing sustenance in any similar fashion, this is done in a very ritualistic manner. It is mundane, if I'm frank.
I concluded much the same of the Ripper, but what manner of different breed of individual does he believe this other attacker might be?
Charisma and expression. For one, here is what we know. They only strike when the sun is absent. Two, they have a very particular manner of prey, which they draw sustenance from. In this case, peoples of higher learning. Thirdly, they must draw this sustenance in a way that is not perceivable. Fourthly, they are very covert to the ordinary observer, suggesting this is behavioral, be that of the individual or perhaps as a collective rule of similar kinds. Unfortunately, when looking upon the evidence, we have concluded that it may be a vampire. Do you believe in the existence of such creatures?
Rebecca raises an eyebrow at that before saying, I do not ever remember to have trembled at a tale of superstition or to have feared the apparition of a spirit. Darkness had no effect upon my fancy, and the churchyard, she says, glancing over the cemetery was not far, was to me merely the receptacle of the wolf, which from being the seat of beauty and strength had become food for the wolf.
Inclining forward, he has a faint smile. Forgive my forwardness. May I inquire if you are familiar with a gentleman? He pauses momentarily. You can see his knee bouncing as though he's a puppy with a tail that needs to wag. Who wears ill-fitted suits, curly dark hair, traces of a beard, and gray eyes. You realize immediately whom he's speaking of. And it doesn't... He's speaking of Reginald Moore, the Brujah Primogen.
Oh no.
At once you see him lean forward. Is he a colleague of yours? I mean no ill intent. I bear no malice to the man. I'm more curious to speak to him if you could arrange such an interview.
Can I read him again?
Perception and empathy. You have this man's utter attention at full. He is fascinated with you and the subject. You can see the gleam of curiosity in his eyes and the sharp,
intellect working furiously. Yet he seems to have absolutely no fear of the situation he's in. He is in a private room with something he has identified as possibly either acquainted to or maybe a vampire themselves. You're not sure if he's quite aware of what you are yet. And he's completely unafraid. Either because he's a moron, an idiot, a bumbling fool, or he doesn't know he should be.
This fucking guy. Oh dear, oh dear. Mr. Harker, if I may ask, what would you want to discuss with this person that you described?
Everything. For instance, what sustenance is it that he draws from these victims? Why them? Is it necessity for such a peculiar breed of man or woman? Or is it preference? How does he guise himself in the manner so human? It would be a shorter list to say what I'm not interested in asking this individual. Their very existence fascinating.
Rebecca brings her hand to hold her own, feeling tea inside, turning the cup so slightly, just playing with it as she thinks, before she finally asks Mr. Harker, in my time in the Golden Dawn, I found myself enamored. What possible secrets and mysteries might exist? How far do you believe that you are willing to go to unearth mysteries that you are going into?
I have no fears of pursuing my interests wherever they may take me. He holds up a hand. After all, the fear of the supernatural is nothing more than a remnant of superstition of primitive peoples.
Prick her finger with the sharpened pencil of her chatelaine while her other hand remains under the table before she moves up closer to the window to look out of the back to him as she asks him, what credence, if any, you give to those such stories of Shelley's Frankenstein, Stevenson's strange case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, or even Lefano's Carmilla? Were those creatures not dangerous, do you think, Mr. Hawk? As she, with her back turned to him, lets some of the blood from her pricked finger drip into the cup of tea.
Charisma and subterfuge, or stealth.
I'll go with subterfuge.
You maintain his attentions wholeheartedly for the most part. Putting a bit of poison in the water. As you ask your questions, he turns in his seat to look at you more fully. Just as with Christianity, I miss. Once scrutinized by the rational mind, it doesn't hold much water. these fanciful stories written by authors are just that. They are stories born of superstitious minds that do not approach these things with any real knowledge or rationality. It is fanciful. It is for artistic sake. But there is no science to these works. That is why there is nothing to fear of them. That is why those creatures are dangerous merely in fiction. All of a sudden, you hear the intrusion of another sound. You are very much a 19th century man, Miss Docker. As though appeared Charnock stand in the center of the table, not on it, but on the other side of it, closest to the door.
It has not been now, has it?
No. Parker leaned back in his seat, looking up at the man, without fear but wonder at his sudden appearance. Charnock looking at him after exchanging with you a mischievous smirk.